Hello and Vanakkam. Welcome to another episode of Federal Election Series, brought to you by Tamil Australian and Media 365. In this series, we'll speak to candidates across the political spectrum to understand their policy priorities, amplify the voices of multicultural communities, and importantly, ask questions that would help you make an informed choice before the federal election on 3rd of May 2025. Today, I have another special guest with me, Honourable Julian Hill MP, Federal Member for Bruce and Assistant Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. Mr. Hill was elected to Parliament first in 2016 and has held the seat of Bruce ever since. Today, I'll be talking to Honourable Julian Hill MP to understand his policy platform and ask questions that matter to you and everyday Australians. Minister Hill, thank you so much for your time today, especially in midst of a busy federal election campaign. We really appreciate, and on behalf of our viewers from Tamil Australian and Media 365, once again, really appreciate it for your time.
Thank you. Vanakkam, good to be with you. And yeah, I'm here, I suppose, as a MP for South East Melbourne with a very large and vibrant Tamil community, but also as the Assistant Minister for Multicultural Affairs and a huge supporter of diverse media, of independent multicultural media and community media. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Before every interview, we go about asking members from our community, but especially wanting to understand about what you do for the electorate and how you've connected with them. And majority of the community leaders have told me that you're very visible. You're out and about for every community function that happens in this area. And importantly, they've acknowledged that even if you can't solve all issues, but you've always acknowledged and you told them that you're always there to help them. So that is a rare compliment for a politician. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I'd say thank you. Look, being a politician, in my view, is a vocation, not a job. If you're not prepared to work just about all day, every day, then you shouldn't have this role. It is a privileged role to be able to lead a community and contribute to the government of our country, although some days a terrible job. But it is a wonderful community, and I've tried since my time in Parliament to first and foremost look after people locally, as you say, to get back to people, and if you can help, do it quickly. If you can't help, then also be honest with people and say, look, that's not something we can deal with. Here's where you could go to make sure we get our fair share, but also now having the great privilege and responsibility of being a member of the Australian government and contributing to the whole nation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, once again, thank you so much for whatever you do for our community. Just extending from that question, despite your hard work, some commentators have predicted a very close contest here in this electorate of Bruce. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I take nothing for granted, and every election is tough. There's no such thing as an easy election. The electoral boundaries of the seat of Bruce have changed more than any seat in Victoria since I was elected in 2016. When I first stood for Parliament in 2016, the seat of Bruce was almost a totally different seat. It had Glen Waverley, Willis Hill, Mulgrave, bits of Springvale, Noble Park, Notting Hill, and so on. Now, today, only Dandenong North and a bit of Dandenong are still in the seat. I've got Dove to New Memmering, Endeavour Hills, Hallam, Listerfield, South, Narre Warren, all of Narre Warren North, Harkaway, a little bit of Berwick and a bit of Cranbourne North and half of Narre South. Completely different seat. And what that means over time is that the notional margin has changed rapidly from 1.8% when I was elected and I got it to 4% on my first go. Then it became 14%, then last time 6.5%, and now they say on paper about 5%. I take nothing for granted. As I said, I work hard every day. We're putting a strong case to the community. I've knocked on thousands of doors, but I do that all the time to stay in touch with the community. And the feedback we're getting is very positive at a local level, but also as the election campaign wears on, about a week to go now. Wonderful feedback about the Prime Minister's focus, about his clarity, and about the fact that we're actually putting forward policies and a vision to deal with the cost of living pressures now that people are facing, but also build Australia's future. Look, a total contrast with the chaos that has been the Liberal Party campaign. I've worked for Liberal governments before I was in Parliament as a senior executive for both sides of politics. I've never seen a campaign, honestly, as bad as Peter Dutton's campaign. They want to bring that American-style cuts and chaos and that terrible politics to our country. $600 billion of risky nuclear reactors. The guy's going to an election promising, I've never seen this before, if Peter Dutton's elected, he's going to raise your income taxes, and not a single credible costed policy. So there is a contrast, but I take nothing for granted.
Certainly. Just want to talk to you about this a very, very important talking point to this electorate. Mainstream media have spoken about youth crime, and the majority of them have focused on youth crime in this electorate especially. What do you think, if should you be re-elected, what do you think you could do? What sort of vital role could you play to ensure this youth crime is eradicated in this community?
Yeah. I've always lived in Melbourne, and we need to get back to not just being a safe community, and by world standards we're still a safe community, but making sure people feel safe. And that has been a bit of a shock to Melburnians, seeing some of the things on TV and on the internet. I'll just make a couple of points. For your listeners to understand, firstly, our constitutional arrangements, the Constitution written in 1901 was a political compromise from the 1890s, and gives power to the state governments, not the federal government, over state police, over courts and so on. So a couple of points flow from that. I'm a minister in the Home Affairs Department. The national government does terrorism and anti-money laundering and cyber security and human trafficking and hate crimes. And there's crimes that the federal government does do. But the vast majority of the things that are concerning all of us in the community actually sit with state governments. And what we've seen is a spike in repeat young offenders. In most states and territories, the Victorian government therefore recently toughened bail laws, and I was pleased to see that, like everyone. Yeah. Hopefully in the next few months the judges get the message and we see that problem come back. But my final 2 points I'd make. I door-knocked a policeman in Narre Warren a few weeks ago and said, so what do you think of this youth crime issue? It was before the bail law changes, and he said, well, 2 things. We're still a safe community and people shouldn't fundamentally be scared going to the shops. Most people don't commit crimes, most people are not victims of crime. But there is a problem with repeat youth offending and they need to deal with it to fix most of the problem. And with all that context, any federal MP who turns up on your television or turns up at your doorstep and says, I'm going to fix all of this, is frankly lying to you. And Peter Dutton's trying to make people angry, wind people up, make people scared, because that's what he's done for 20 years, whatever the issue is. That's his kind of politics.
Right. I hope, in times to come it gets better for our community, just to make
Me too, and I hope the bail law changes work. I've just announced an extra $1.7 million from the federal government towards CCTV in the city of Greater Dandenong to help police with their work and make public places safe. So there's certainly things that the federal government can do and are doing. I'm a minister, I deport criminals. That's also part of my responsibilities. But I'm just giving people context that there's some things we can do and some we have to rely on the states to do.
100%. And just want to ask a couple of policy questions. Some of our viewers are small business owners in this community, and they've had probably the last 3 years have been extremely tough for small business owners. And what policies is Labour Party offering to small business owners here in the community?
Yeah, so it has been tough. It's been tough for many Australians. It's been tough for many small businesses. Not all, of course. There's many businesses doing wonderfully, and there's many people in the community who have also been fine. But through the cost of living pressures, it's the same issue has been hurting consumers as hitting many small businesses, and that's inflation. For your listeners, in simple terms, inflation is when prices of goods and services go up much faster than wages. And what we've seen is a global spike of inflation. The government inherited a mess from the former government just under 3 years ago. When Labor was elected, inflation, the rise of prices had started to take off. It was 6.5% and peaked at 8%. That's a disaster for an economy like ours. Because of the work that the government has done with the Australian people and with small businesses getting through this tough period, the year ahead looks much better. Inflation is now down under 3%. Wages are growing a little faster than inflation. Debt forecasts in the country are nearly $200 billion lower than when Labor was elected. Interest rates are falling, but we've done this with the lowest average unemployment for 50 years that the country's seen, and that I'm proud of. A Labor government has not done what Peter Dutton wanted, which is cut the crap out of the public sector, out of services, and push hundreds of thousands of people into unemployment. But because the Reserve Bank had raised interest rates to push inflation down, it's hit a lot of small businesses because consumers, your family, people you know, have paid a little bit more on their mortgage, or a lot more in some cases, which has given people less to spend at the shops. That's a period that we've had to get through to get inflation down, because the alternative, if you let inflation run wild, it destroys an economy, and it's ordinary people and small businesses that are hit the hardest. Peter Dutton's mate Gina Reinhardt, the richest woman in the country, people like that do really well with inflation because all their assets go up in value.
Certainly.
But we've come through the tough bit together. You know, the year ahead looks good, and the interest rates are falling, so that will help small businesses. The power bill rebates we've extended to small businesses, but also things like the instant asset write-off test. We're not trying to buy votes. We've done that in a way which is good policy. Remember, it was a Labor government that introduced that, and Tony Abbott and the Liberals that got rid of it until we embarrassed them to putting it back.
Right. Just wanted to touch a little bit about international students, because the majority of small business actually rely on that workforce. And some of the small business owners tell me they're not employing international students just because it's cheap labor. It's because they're not able to find relevant people who can actually do those jobs. And international students actually contribute to this economy by paying taxes and in multiple other fronts. And I spoke to a vice chancellor very recently of a very reputed university here in Melbourne, who told me that the largest group of STEM graduates are actually international students. And if you take the gig economy or even everything that happens around, those small jobs that people don't want to do are being done by international students. Are they being used as scapegoats because they're real people, and we're a much better society? Don't you think they should be loved and embraced in this particular community?
I could talk about this all day. I love international education. I ran it as a senior public servant in Victoria under Liberal and Labor governments. International education is a wonderful success story for Australia. We should be proud of it. We're proud of many other sectors. We should be proud of international education. That young people, usually young people, choose, because they have choices, to come and live in our society, to pay international student fees, often, as you say, to work part-time jobs in parts of the economy that others may not want to work in, and contribute in that way is a good thing. A few points though. It is our fourth biggest export sector and the biggest here in Victoria, so it is worth a lot to the economy. It's great for soft power because most students go home and for the rest of their lives have a connection with Australia. And some of those students, not all, can ever stay, but some then choose to become very highly skilled migrants, contributing to the growth of our economy and building our country. So that's the good bit. But there will always be more people in the world who want to come and study in Australia than we can accept. And the government's been saying that the growth of international education has to be sustainable. We're not blaming, certainly Labor is not, I'll get to Peter Dutton in a minute, is not blaming the international students for the country's failure to build enough houses for decades. But it's true that we can't have everyone come here and study who wants to come here. So it's about a balance and sustainable growth. What the government's done in the first 2 or 3 years is put in place integrity measures to make sure that genuine students are coming, not people on a work scam who don't really study or just want to take fake refugee claims. And that is working. The growth in student numbers is declining to a manageable level. We also need to find mechanisms, hence the legislation, that a government of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's us or the Liberals, can cap international student numbers in a sensible way. Now, Peter Dutton said he supported that, but when it came to the Parliament, of course, he voted against it. They had a political objective just to cause chaos with our fourth biggest export sector, completely disgraceful. Imagine if they'd done that with iron ore or gas or something else. And so, yes, the Liberals are trying to blame international students and migrants for things that are not their fault. Their policies would decimate the sector, cause tens of billions of dollars of damage to the economy, smash our universities and our global rankings and research capability, but also hurt businesses. So I'm very proud of the sector. We welcome good quality students. It has to be sustainable and managed. But what Peter Dutton and the Liberals are proposing would be a disaster.
Certainly. I just want to pick you up on that because international students have been blamed for housing crisis in this country. And secondly, Before you were elected, before this term of Parliament, international students were promised a 5-year post-study work visa, which was then scaled back to 2 years. This falls partially within your portfolio, and they are, some of them actually feel that they've been cheated. Do you think so? Do you think something could be done to address this issue? At least provide some certainty for these students before any policy change could happen for new students who are coming into this country?
Yeah, good question. You're right. I mean, it was Scott Morrison as the Liberals, as the former Prime Minister, who said if you can't get a seat on the train or the freeway's crowded, blame the international students. It was Scott Morrison and the Liberals who literally told students, if you don't like it, go home, making them feel incredibly unwelcome at a very vulnerable time during the pandemic. And now, of course, it's the Liberals that's trying to blame them for their own failure in 9 years in government not to build enough houses. In response to your question, I'll be upfront. A responsible government, which Labor is, will always act in the national interest. Migration settings and visa policy settings will sometimes change depending on the economic interest and where the country's at. And we make no apology for that. That's what Australian citizens expect the government to do. Of course, where we can, we will grandfather those changes and be sensitive to visa applicants. But we have to put Australians first and the needs of Australia first. And that point you make, there are still, by world standards, very generous post-study work rights for most students. But the changes in post-study work rights, and sometimes they've gone up and other times they've gone down, are about helping to try and manage net overseas migration in the country.
Certainly. The reason why I asked you that question is because you are a voice of many unheard voices, and you've helped a lot of international students and other visa holders in this country in some shape or form, which is why I raised this question with you. But thank you for the in-depth answer that you've given to this question. Let me spend some time asking about multicultural affairs.
Sure.
Because some of the multicultural community leaders think it gains prominence at the time of election, and it's forgotten during the term of Parliament. How do you think an ongoing support and development could be provided for multicultural affairs in this country?
We are a multicultural nation. Our continent is vast and ancient and has always been a multicultural place. Indigenous Australians spoke more than 250 different languages. Then, of course, European settlement, and now people from every part of the world. Australians have far more in common than we have difference. But the great promise of Australian multiculturalism is that everyone gets a fair go, no matter their background, their ethnicity, their faith, their identity, how long they've been here. Generally, we live up to that promise, but for some Australians, too often we don't, whether that's through structural racism or other barriers to full belonging and participation. I think the government in our first term has certainly not neglected multicultural policy. We undertook the Multicultural Framework Review, which was released in June last year. Tens of thousands of hours, thousands of submissions and forums and consultations went into that review by an independent panel. It was the most in-depth examination of Australia's multicultural policy settings for a generation. And it will continue to guide investments and government decision-making for years to come. It's available publicly, it's on the web, and we've signed up to the core principles of commitment, inclusion, belonging. Every Australian should feel like they belong. And an Australian to me is someone who's committed to our country and to that principle of mutual respect for their fellow Australians who may be very, very different people. So we've also undertaken, picking up that point I made before, the anti-racism work through the Human Rights Commission. That again is a publicly available piece of work. We're investing significant money in multicultural infrastructure, in community support, and of course in maintaining our social cohesion. Social cohesion is under strain.
Certainly,
we've seen the Greens political party and Peter Dutton's Liberal Party seek to weaponise, say, the conflict in the Middle East for domestic political purposes. That does our society no good. So, I don't accept that this is something which just happens at elections. I understand, people during elections, there's politicians and media debate talking about all sorts of things, but certainly for our government, we have been working on this day in, day out I'm the Minister working with Tony Burke on this issue. The final thing I'd just mention, we had a great announcement this morning that I did with the Prime Minister in Melbourne at a Chinese community language school that if re-elected, a Labor government will invest $25 million in community language schools. And I know the Tamil community language school, Tamil is the world's oldest continuously spoken and written language.
Yeah.
And there's many wonderful Tamil schools. I give out the VCE prizes and certificates each year in our part of Melbourne. Community language schools have been part of the fabric of our country for decades. Growing up, I knew I couldn't play with my Greek friends on Saturday because they were off at Greek school. Now, of course, it's Tamil, it's Sinhala, it's Chinese, it's Vietnamese, it's Urdu, it's Pashto, it's Hindi, it's Gujarati, it's Punjabi, it's Malayalam, it's Dari. It's so many different languages, Arabic and so on. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, certainly. Just wanted to spend some time talking about tax cuts. I'm aware Stage 3 tax cuts were redesigned last year to ensure everyone gets it. And recently during the federal budget, a modest change was made to those tax cuts. Don't you think it's very modest?
So the total tax cut...
Around $5 a week, if I'm not
No,
wrong.
the total tax cut, when you look at the redesigned Stage 3 cuts and the next two tax cuts, the average is about $2,500 a year, about $50 a week as they scale up. But we have entered a very bizarre period in Australian politics. And I'll make this point. I've never before seen an opposition leader, Peter Dutton, say he's going to an election and if you vote for Peter Dutton, he's going to raise your income tax. I mean, you couldn't make this up. It is truly bizarre. They've spent years saying they're the party of lower taxes, yet his policy, just because he couldn't agree with Labor's policy of cutting taxes, is to go to the election and say, we'll raise your taxes. So what the Liberal Party are offering are sort of, 1 year cash bribes to try and trick people into voting for them. It's not a permanent tax cut. It does nothing for structural tax reform. It does nothing to return some bracket creep to people. It's just a bribe. So, I will stand on the government's record on cost of living and tax cuts. We did redesign the Stage 3 tax cuts to make sure everyone got a tax cut while we were helping people through an inflationary environment. We've done free TAFE, power bill rebates, cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare, more bulk billing. There's a large number of things that the government's tried to do to help people put downwards pressure on inflation while interest rates are now coming down. Peter Dutton opposed every single cost of living measure that the government put forward, every single one. And so if we'd listened to Peter Dutton, every Australian household would be $7,200 worse off and unemployment would be higher. So we're not going to take lectures from that mob. They're not ready for government. They haven't done the work. They've had 3 years to prepare for the election. They don't have a single credible costed policy. And half the things they announce, they then change. They're like campaigning against themselves now.
Certainly. Let me spend some time talking about housing before we wrap up.
Sure.
I'm sure your opponents have announced policies in this space where mortgage interest payments could be deducted at the end of the financial year. This policy does matter to young Australians as well. What is Labor offering in this regard? So
I didn't think you could come up with a more stupid policy for housing than the Liberal Party's superannuation for housing policy. Literally, gold medal stupidity, and then they invented tax-deductible mortgages. You couldn't make this up. Just for your listeners, for your viewers, imagine that 4 young couples all go to an auction, and they've all got an extra $40,000 or $50,000 in their pocket because they rated their superannuation. What do you think's going to happen? They're going to bid up the cost of the house. Peter Dutton's policies are a scam. They don't build one single new house. And the key to housing affordability, your viewers are sensible, smart people. They're business people. Supply, demand. The key to housing affordability is to build more houses. You don't make housing more affordable by making it more expensive. It is literally nuts. So the combination of their two policies would push up the cost of housing by 7% to 9% for the super, and goodness knows what with the tax-deductible mortgages. They don't help people. They give cash to people who are already going to get in the housing market to bid up the cost of housing. Labor's policies are about building more housing, boosting supply, the Housing Affordability Future Fund, 100,000 new dwellings that will be available only to first home owners to bid for, not bidding against investors, and 5% deposit schemes. You know, there's more, but I'll give you that comparison.
So, yeah.
We're focused on supply and helping people get into the market. The Liberals have gone crazy. They're focused on pushing up the cost of housing by letting people raid their super accounts. So trash your retirement savings and bid up the cost of housing. Genius.
Certainly.
I feel very strongly about this, as you can tell, but it's so important for the future of our country that we help people and build more houses, not that we push up the cost of existing houses.
Certainly. I hope this policy does have an impact. Should he be re-elected,
Yeah.
I hope young Australians could own a house, because I think that's the fabric.
Look, I hope that too, but I say to my staff when they tell me that they hope something, I say, hope is not a strategy, get a plan, and we have a plan.
Certainly. That's a good ending, I suppose. What is your message to the voters of Bruce and Australians in general?
My message is, this is a serious election. The world is changing rapidly. We see chaos and cuts in America. We see turmoil in many parts of the world. Australians face a really clear and a serious choice between the Albanese Labor government that's been steady, no scandals, has helped people through the cost of living environment with inflation and interest rates now coming down, to build Australia's future, to invest in Medicare, make it easier to see a doctor for free, more tax cuts for every taxpayer, continued power bill rebates, renewable energy, a future made in Australia, free TAFE, cutting 20% off student HECS debts, and real action on housing, building more houses. On the other hand, we've got Peter Dutton and the Liberal parties who want to raise your income taxes, build $600 billion of risky nuclear reactors to push up your power bills. They've had, 3 work-from-home policies. They don't support work from home. They want to bring American-style cuts and chaos and massive cuts to the public sector. $350 billion of secret cuts and goodness knows what more to pay for $600 billion of nuclear reactors. So it's a really clear choice. But also, at the end of the day, when you wake up, when your viewers wake up after the election, the day after, do you want Anthony Albanese as Prime Minister, or do you want Peter Dutton with all that negativity and chaos? It's not going to be a Greens Party government in their imaginary government and their fantasy budget. You can't have a government of independence. This is a clear choice, and I encourage people to actually look at the substance of the matter and vote Labor.
Perfect. Julian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Viewers, I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Honourable Julian Hill MP. If you want me to ask a specific question to any of the political candidates, please let us know in the comments section. Until we meet in our next episode, this is your host, Mithun Rajan.